Today's lesson is how to calculate the volume of a sphere and a hemisphere. So before we get started, let's talk about the difference between sphere versus hemisphere. So this right here is called a sphere. It's like a ball, like a tennis ball, golf ball, baseball. It has no bases, even though it's got that little circle. That is just so it won't roll away. And I can set it down. But a sphere is like a ball. A hemisphere is, if I put it to the side, it's half of a sphere. The way that this best works is, if you kind of think about it, we live in the northern hemisphere above the equator. So this like blue line, that's our equator. So we live in the northern hemisphere. A hemisphere is just half of a sphere. You can see by lining them up that that is just literally half of this. So hemisphere is half, sphere is all of it. So let's talk about the volume formula for a sphere. In a sphere, there is no area of the base. So our volume formula, all you need is a radius. It's 4/3 pi r cubed. The volume formula for a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. So all we really need here is a radius. So I'm going to look at my picture. I have a center to a point on the circle. So my radius is 3. So volume equals 4/3 pi, 3 cubed. There really is just no easy way to kind of remember this formula. You kind of just need to learn it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do exact volume. Sorry, I have a hair on me. We're going to do exact volume. And then we're going to round to the nearest cubic meter. All right? So to calculate this volume, I'm just going to type it in. There really is nothing else to do. There really is nothing left to do other than just type it in. So oh my goodness. So what I'm going to do, all I did here was I substituted radius with 3. So I'm going to type it in how I see it. 4/3 times 3 to the 3rd power. And I get 36. So my exact volume, I get 36, and I bring down pi. Meters cubed. To calculate nearest cubic meter, as we've been doing throughout these videos on volume, we actually type pi into the calculator. So we have 4/3 times pi times 3 to the 3rd. Rounding to the nearest cubic meter would mean whole number, so I should be looking at the 10 spot. My 10 spot is not 5 or higher, so this is going to stay 113. So I get 113 meters to the 3rd. Okay, let's try the next one. In our next problem, again, this is a sphere, so volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. Looking at my answer here, I need to find a radius. So remember, radius is from a center to a point on the circle. And I noticed that I have 18. 18 goes all the way across. So that lets me know 18 is the diameter and 9 should be my radius because half of 18 is 9. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring down my formula. 4/3 pi. My radius is 9 cubed. So all I'm doing here is I'm replacing radius with 9. And then it really is as simple as, let's just type it into the calculator. So let's see, we're going to do exact volume. And we're going to round to the nearest cubic inch. So we're going to do exact and rounding. So let's test this out. What we're going to do in our calculator to get the exact volume is basically just ignore pi, just like we've been doing with cylinder and cone. So I type everything in. I've got my 4/3 times 9 raised to the 3rd power, and I get 972. So I'm going to take 972 and write that here, and pi just kind of follows it down, inches to the 3rd power. If we want to calculate the rounded volume, we do the same thing. So 4/3 times, and this time we actually press the pi button, times 9 to the 3rd. Rounding to the nearest cubic inch, again, that is whole number that we're looking for here. So looking at my decimal, my 6 is 5 or higher. So that means it's going to bounce or bump 3 up to 4 for our final volume of 3,054. So for my nearest cubic inch, I get 3,054 inches cubed. Now, those formulas are dealing with a sphere, a full, entire volume of a sphere. On this next problem, we're going to be working with hemisphere. We are going to use the same formula for sphere, but before we get our final answer, I only need half of it because it's a hemisphere. So I'm going to divide my final volume by 2, and that's all you have to do to calculate a hemisphere because it is just half of a sphere. Okay? So let's go ahead and try this one out. Again, my volume formula is 4/3 pi r cubed. Looking at my picture, I should see that center to point on circle is 27. So my radius here is going to be 27 cubed. So bringing everything down, get 4/3 pi times 27 cubed. We're going to do exact volume first. Actually, let's go ahead and just continue with volume. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So, oh my goodness, the sphere. So I have 4/3 times 27 to the 3rd power. And I'm going to go ahead and just write this down first. 26,244 pi. Now, in this case, I want to divide by 2. And I'm going to divide by 2 because this is a hemisphere and I only want half. So what I'm going to do in my calculator, I'm just going to do divided by 2. And I get 13,122. So my exact volume is 13,122 pi centimeters cubed. And when we round, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to type that into my calculator, 13,122 pi. And I'm rounding to the nearest cubic centimeter. I'm going to look at the 10th spot. 9 is 5 or higher. So that means it's going to bump 3 up to 4 for a final volume of 41,224 centimeters cubed. So the important thing here to remember is if you have a sphere, a full sphere, the formula is 4/3 pi r cubed. If you're trying to calculate the volume of a hemisphere, you still use 4/3 pi r cubed, but you want to divide by 2 because I only want half of the volume.